Good morning. I am Ruben, and this is my wife,
Sarah.
and we are both employees at Gold Creek. And well, first of all, congratulations. You made it to day number 18. It's amazing. It's awesome. I mean, for me, I read the Bible, the 1 year Bible. This is my fifth time, and I think it's awesome. I remember reading it the first time, and it was a little stressful at first. But now, like every time that I go and read the Bible, every single, even though it's the same book, I always find something new,
Yeah,
which is exciting.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only read it 4 times, even though it's painful to admit. I've done it 1 year less than you. But I
Yep.
feel the same way. Each time I read it, I get a little more out of it, and God speaks to me in a different way.
I mean, for me, I love to read the Bible because I talk to God, He talks to me. But it is a good motivation for me to not stop reading it because I want to make sure that
Because
I'm
you want
always
to beat
beating you.
me.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I'm just
know.
saying.
I know.
But today we are starting the first story in the book of Genesis about little Joe, or also known as Joseph. See, I call it little Joe because back in the days when our kids were tiny, that was the first story that we watched with the what was
Veggie Tales.
VeggieTales.
Yeah. Which that song is going to be in my head now.
Do not start it because it took me a couple years to kind of forget about that story. But it was a good story. Well, I don't know if you knew this, but when we were watching those stories back then, I never knew that they were Bible stories. I
Yeah, you
thought they
just
were
thought it was
just,
a cartoon
and they were pretty
with a
cool.
pickle
Yeah.
and a cucumber.
What was his name? Bob and Larry.
Yeah.
I'm starting to kind of get the song again. We're good. But what I like about the story of Joseph, it's that Jacob, Joseph's dad, was actually pretty cool. I could relate to him a lot. He had a lot of kids. He
No,
had 12 kids.
you cannot relate to that. We have three. We do not have 12 kids.
Well, I know we have, well, yeah, and we're done at how many? Three, that's it, no
Yeah, we're
more.
done.
But I guess I could relate to Jacob with the fact that he had kids when he was just maybe like in his 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
And when he had Joseph, he was older, just like us, right?
Although it's interesting that they say he was maybe 70 to 90 years old when he had Joseph, which
Well, I'm
is
pretty
kind of
sure
hard to
I'm
imagine.
pretty sure he was in better shape than us in our late 30s. But what I like about the story is that Joseph was kind of like the special kid, the golden child. Everybody, when I say everybody loved him, one person, Jacob, it actually talks about it. The other 11 kids didn't like him as much. They were jealous. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of our kids because we have
Hmm.
older kids now. And yeah, I love them and they're great. But we focus a lot on the baby
Eliana's the
because
special
how old is
one.
she now? 18 months or so?
Yeah.
Maybe a little older now.
She's kind of like our miracle special baby, so we kind of treat her that way.
And I feel bad because often when we're talking about the baby, it's all about her. I even tell the kids, like, oh, yeah, she's actually my favorite kid, or I love her more than you guys. And I'm just joking around. But then I start thinking, what if they actually believe me? What if they start thinking, like, maybe I do like them a little bit more and they start getting jealous?
Yeah.
Who knows? I feel a little bit bad, but what about you? What did you?
I think that it's really fitting that we're looking at this story today and we're looking at Joseph and his dreams. And he shares
Mhm.
with his brothers, and they clearly didn't like the fact that they bowed down to him, but
Yeah.
he had these dreams. And today's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And I think it's so fitting with Martin Luther King Jr. having a dream and that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
And just to see how when you trust God to use you, we're only in the beginning of Joe's story, but just
Yeah.
knowing how impactful it can be, especially on a day like today.
I mean, what I don't get, well, I mean, I do get it, but it still kind of throws me off. It's hard to kind of really think about it. But the fact that Joseph had 11 brothers and they were, I mean, to the point that they wanted to kill Joseph just
Hmm.
out of jealousy. Because I have brothers, I have two brothers and a sis. And often, I mean, we like each other, but once in a while we kind of
Yeah.
disagree a little bit. And I mean, it helps a little bit that they live far away. So maybe that's the recipe to not have a lot of
Right.
issues. But it's just crazy that in the story of Genesis, they got to the point that they wanted to kill Joseph. And I just wish that somebody would stand up and say, like one of the brothers, like, no,
Well,
that's not
one
okay.
did. One did.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that's why you like this story.
Reuben, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he was a good kid, just like me. But I mean, the crazy thing is that he stood up, but he never voiced it out
He
loud.
never stopped it.
No, because they wanted to kill Joseph and they just wanted to do that. But then Reuben told them, kind of convinced them that, you know what, instead of just killing him, how about we just throw him in the hole and just sell him as a slave?
Hmm.
And eventually that happened. But I felt bad for Reuben because he came back, but it was a little too late because
Hmm.
Joseph was gone. He was
And
so.
I know the next part of the story is part that I think like both of us can relate to too. I mean, I cannot even imagine what Jacob felt when they come back and say your son is dead, and especially after hearing how close he was
Yeah.
with his son, and that's every parent's worst fear. So I can relate to that part of the story too.
Yeah. And I also feel bad for Ruben because obviously the other kids, they were just upset. They wanted to kill him. But then what about Ruben? He wanted to do the right thing, just didn't want to stand up and do it. I just wonder how he felt. Did he
Hmm.
have regrets? Maybe he started thinking like I should have said something out loud, like, no, stop, don't do it.
Yeah.
Who knows? What about in the New Testament in Matthew?
Yeah, I love this reading today. And we see again Jesus heal another person. He was blind and couldn't hear, and he healed him. And then we see once again that the Pharisees question him and
Yeah.
question where he gets his power and ability from. And I love how Jesus could hear them, and he always had this way of just like calling them out. And
Yeah.
he says, "You think I get my power from Satan, but if I got my power from Satan, why would I work against myself? Why would I cast myself out?" So just proving that his power came from God. So I
Yeah.
love that part of the story.
And he had a lot of patience. When I read
Hmm.
this section, it kind of reminds me a lot of our two kids, but our oldest son,
Yeah,
where how old is he now? 13,
13.
almost 14. And lately, the last 6, 9 months, he started to challenge everybody. But I
Yeah.
think it's personal, it's against me. He's challenging me a lot. And for me, it's kind of like a reminder that I'm not Jesus. I try to be like Jesus and have
Yeah.
patience.
Hmm.
But sometimes, man, I do lose my patience a little bit.
Yeah, definitely that reminder. And that's what we all aspire
Yeah.
to, right? To be more like Jesus. So seeing how patient he was and how he was just so wise. And so it's something I definitely
Yeah.
aspire to be.
Is there anything in this section that you highlighted?
Oh, yes, I highlighted later in our reading in Matthew. So it talks about the tree and how you can identify it by its fruit, good or bad. And that definitely spoke to me, especially the verses
Matthew,
in
right?
Matthew. Yeah, so it's 12:35 to 36. And it says, "You brood of snakes, how could evil men like you speak what is good and right? For whatever is in your heart determines what you say. A good person produces good things from the treasury of a good heart, and an evil person produces evil things from the treasury of an evil heart." So it's just that reminder and
Yeah.
that conviction of like your what you say reflects what's in your heart. And so it's such a good reminder. You know, we always say that think before you speak, but I definitely want the things that I say to be a reflection of Jesus and
Yeah.
of the Holy Spirit. So it's a very good reminder.
It is, yeah. For me, I mean, today's reading, there's a lot of good stuff. But the thing that spoke to me was actually in the book of Proverbs,
Hmm.
chapter 3, verse 27, 28. And just the whole chapter talks about trusting in the Lord.
Hmm.
But I like the verse. It's 26, 28. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to help them. If you can help your neighbor now, don't say, come back tomorrow and I'll help you. Because, I mean, think about it. For me, this reminds me a lot of things that we do often. I do it a lot, where it's all about me. And it's sometimes I struggle to just think about the neighbor, think about everybody else.
Hmm.
Um, my neighbor, we have a lot of neighbors.
Yeah. Well, we
Uh,
just moved, but only like 3 houses away. So we still have the
yeah.
same neighbors.
Well, but they're still different neighbors. But it's like it reminds me of Jesus and the biggest commandment love your neighbor.
As yourself.
Yes. And imagine, I mean, the year 2020 was rough for many of us, a lot of people, where some people maybe struggled. Maybe they needed food, maybe they
Hmm.
needed money, maybe it was something basic where they just needed to talk to someone. But what if somebody came to us and we were like, you know what? I'm a little busy today. Come back
Yeah.
tomorrow or next month or in 6. So to me, that it's really tough because I think that we need to help each other out at all times.
Well, sometimes it's hard to ask. I know that we've had
Yeah.
those moments in our life, and it's that reminder that we could be the hand of God to someone else. Like you never know who God's going to put in your path. So that happened to us kind of at the beginning of our time at Gold Creek. And we
Yeah.
didn't ask, but people knew that we had a need and they were bringing us food. And I just remember like how that made us feel. And I definitely think that that's what connected us to Gold Creek. And
Yeah.
that's what made us feel like loved and cared about. So it's so important to remember that we could be what brings people to
And
Christ. So,
especially like me, like for me, I do struggle with pride a little bit.
mhm.
And sometimes I have a hard time. letting people
Asking.
know that,
Mm-hmm.
you know what, I need help. I try to show my image that I'm perfect, that I'm good, but we're not.
Mm-hmm.
But what was good about 2020, that even though there were so many challenges, there was a lot of people that stood out and helped out. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people.
It stepped up, like in the food bank, many
Hmm.
places. Yeah,
So that was good.
I agree.
Is there any other question that you might still have from today's reading?
Yeah, I always wonder. I mean, we know the Pharisees questioned Jesus to the point of wanting him put to death. I wonder if in moments they started to doubt even their like own feeling that he
Mhm.
wasn't God, or we know that some did later on, but I just wonder if they were really that hard hearted and just never believed he was God, or if they started to question a
Mhm.
little bit.
Really good question.
Mm.
I like it. One of the things that I'm going to try to apply, I mean, it's from today's reading, it's good to love. It's a good reminder to love your neighbor. And I'm going to make it be intentional and try to be there for our neighbors. And it's not just like we said earlier, just the people in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
It's everybody. It could be people within Gold Creek or even people from Mexico that we know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I love today's reading. I love that it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and there's so much good to take out of it. And just that reminder to trust God that he can use you, just like we see in some of these stories from today. So if there's anything that you liked or stood out to you, please post about it, subscribe, like us on Facebook. So thank you for joining us today, and we will see you again soon.